All right, welcome to your next module. This is module 3. You are going to be creating a one-point perspective surreal room design. By the end of this module, you should be able to use one-point perspective to make a space show depth. You will need to have an 8 by 10 piece of paper, a ruler, pencil, colored pencil, or pen. In this module, you will be completing 3 formative assessments. You will have 2 performance tasks and 1 opportunity to excel. Just a reminder, in order to be proficient in this module, you would need to earn proficient on formative assessment 1, 2, 3, and earn proficient on both performance tasks. To earn Excel, all you have to do is be proficient in all these tasks and reach for the Excel opportunity. So we are going to first talk about Surrealism. Surrealism is known for its dreamlike artwork that questions all of the forms of reality around us. So the artists from the Surrealist movement were releasing images from the unconscious mind, the dreamlike state of melting clocks, melting wax faces, scenes that don't really make sense. Surrealism was also during the time of World War I and II. It came out of the Dada movement, which before World War I produced works of anti-art that defied reason. But Surrealism's emphasis was not on negation, but on positive expression. The movement represented a reaction against what its members saw as the destruction wrought by rationalism that had guided European culture and politics in the past and had culminated in the horrors of World War I. All that to say, there was a lot of stuff going on in the world that was extremely depressing and took a lot of the joy and spark for creative juice out of everybody. It was just a dull and dark time for a lot of people in the world. And so here comes Surrealism, creating these bright, dreamlike paintings that were almost this escape from reality. It's like World War I and II didn't matter or wasn't existing when looking at a surrealist work of art. So have you ever observed the strange paintings of Dali or the whimsical paintings of Rene Magritte? Here's their paintings. On the left, you've got Dali and Magritte on the right. These artists are very well known for having used a automatic drawing or writing activity to unlock ideas and images from their unconscious minds. So these artists would all get together and they would drink and be merry, and they would socialize, and they would realize like, oh, I need ideas for a work of art, or I need to begin to write, but I don't know where to start. And so what they would do is they would bring all this empty paper with them, and they'd all sit in a circle, and they'd have one person start a writing or start with a drawing. And then they'd cover it up and they'd pass it on to the next person, and the next person would add to it, and then the next person, and then the next person. But each artist that worked on this work of art did not know what the other artists had created on the piece of paper before them. So in the very end, they'd pull away this paper, and it was this big revealing of this surrealist, dreamlike, not realistic sense of space. And this activity was called the exquisite corpse. It was a way of gathering bizarre ideas and storylines that would inspire authors. And it created this whimsical, nonsensical work of art. So not only do we need to know about not only do we need to know about surrealism, but you need to know about perspective. Perspective is when you have an object in your foreground and you need to show it as it goes back into space, so it travels through your middle ground into your background. This is known as perspective, creating depth in your art. When we work with When we work with perspective, there are a couple things that you will always need to use: a horizon line, a vanishing point, and all the lines that connect our shapes to the vanishing point. These are called vanishing lines. You will use them always, but you will also erase them after using them. For example, the horizon line is going to be a place where we can see the sky and the earth meet in a work of art. You will see this in photography. Our school is in a city. You might look down a street and see the entire street converge down into one point, and at that one point, way far in the distance, you see the sky and the road meet. That is known as your horizon line. But the point in which all the buildings and the road converges to is called the vanishing point. So if we look at this picture here on the right-hand side of the screen, the railroad tracks go all the way back to those hills in the background. The cables go all the way back to that same point, and then the fence along the left-hand side of the railroad tracks merges into that one point where the railroad ends, which right in this area here is our vanishing point. Now you will notice as objects go back in space, they become less refined or less detailed, and they also become much smaller. Using perspective drawing, you can accurately show an object going back in space and getting smaller and smaller. Without screwing it up, you can use a ruler for this activity in order to convey depth in a correct way. So with 1-point perspective, every single line is going to every single line needs to go to the vanishing point. So this image here shows how every angle of the cupboards, of the fridge, every single square on this floor, the shape of the stove and the top of the doors, everything connects back to that vanishing point. The vanishing point truly is the hidden gem to making a two-dimensional flat piece of paper turn into something that is an illusion of a 3D space. So for your first formative assessment, you are going to need to identify perspective in at least 3 pieces of art history. So through your launch task assignments, you will be exposed to all of these different pieces from art history and how you can start to see where all these angles are leading your eyes and where they all converge in the center. Now, the point in which all of these lines come together is where your vanishing point is going to be. So for this assignment, you are going to need to identify the work of art, the artist's name, the horizon line, and you are going to need to use a colored line, just like these images show, to point to where all the angles in the piece are pointing to, bringing us to the vanishing point in the work of art. Your second formative assessment then is going to be taking your knowledge of using the horizon line, the vanishing point, and vanishing lines, and you are going to create 6 surreal boxes. Now, a few requirements do follow this assignment. You need to have 2 boxes that are above the horizon line, 2 boxes on the horizon line, and 2 boxes below. Now, you don't have to just stick with 6 boxes. If this is easy for you, attempt to do more boxes or attempt different shapes. Once you have your boxes drawn, we're going to add surrealist elements to connect the boxes. So we see in this piece here, this nice little, I don't know what kind of line I would describe this as. It kind of looks like a Dr. Seuss line to me. But this surrealist line is connecting our eyes to all of the boxes. A rule of thumb, always use a straight edge or a ruler so that way your work can be successful. And then once you have your boxes drawn, you can add color or shading or even patterns. Here's a few examples. I love that these pieces did not limit themselves to just doing basic boxes, but attempted to mess around with stair shapes or these really cool, they look like wooden blocks to me. But yeah, experimentation is key here. And then also think about a really creative way how you can connect all of these boxes. I love this one on the left-hand side where the giraffe's neck is kind of weaving through each of these boxes or each of these shapes. I think that's a brilliant way to make this playful and interesting, while also, sorry about that, while also connecting all of those boxes. And one more example. See, the hand of the clock is what is connecting all these shapes. Okay. So there is a demonstration for 1-point perspective. I'm not going to teach that until it is time. I thought. There we go. But if you get sick of boxes, I do want you to attempt using other shapes. Boxes are so easy and honestly a little bit boring. You want to try to create variety and interest in your piece. So consider how you might use arches, or how you might use letters, or how you could create this really cool, like open cube, I guess, or these cylinders that are flying through space. Challenge yourself with this assignment. Then your third formative assessment is going to be to create your 1-point perspective room. Now your room is going to need to be lightly drawn because all those vanishing lines that are grayed out here are going to get erased as they touch the vanishing point. As things go back into space, those lines get erased. But in your surreal room, you're going to need a couple of items that are functional. So we'll talk about what that means here in just a second. That second came quickly. Functional is super important when it comes to design. So there is a rule in art that is known as form follows function. You can make anything look good, but what's the point of making art if it's not really going to serve a purpose? When we design and when we engineer, we want our work to be meaningful. We want it to have purpose. So if you look at the white building down at the bottom right-hand corner, it looks incredible. It kind of reminds me of a beehive in a way. That would be form, the way it looks, the design that it has. But the function of it is that within each of these spaces is maybe it's apartments or offices. It's a space that is used for a certain purpose. Glasses. Glasses need to look good. I mean, we all want to be styling in our glasses. We care about the form of those glasses, but the true function of the glasses is not the design, but in helping you to see. So the function of glasses is to see, while the form of glasses is the design. And then same with the chair in the bottom left. We know that a chair, the function is to sit. But the form of that chair is the design, the bean shape of this design, the color of this design. The shape and the color don't really necessarily affect the function that this chair has. So here again is our rule. Form follows function, which means that function is the most important thing when you are setting up the inside of your room. You will need to have functional items that may have a cool form to them, but they need to have a true function in order to fit into the rules of feng shui. Here's an example of form follows function. These tables here on the right-hand side of the screen, we know that a table is functional because you can set stuff on it. These are not just all independent pieces, but in fact they are stacked together, so that way they're not all over the place. They have a storage system. They fit together perfectly. This is function. But then the form of these tables indicates that these tables have specific colors for certain reasons, and the angle of how the bars of the table are part of the form. That's part of the design. It's not serving a specific function. So good interior design rule of thumb is function is super beautiful. If Marie Kondo were here, she would probably say, if it doesn't serve a purpose, if it doesn't do anything, why have it? So if you look at the image here on the right, you'll see that every item that is placed in this 3D interior home serves a function. A toilet, a bed, a stovetop, a refrigerator, a doorway, a couch. All of those are functional. But then after we know that they are functional, that's when you can start to design the form. The cool details about them that make it more interesting to look at. So for your final project, you are going to create a dream room using at least 1 point perspective. You will need to have 5 or more functional elements included for basic everyday living needs. Then you will include at least 3 surreal elements. They need to be dreamlike and they should be pretty visible. It'd be awesome if you included the humor and ironic things. An example is a turtle driving a race car, but not a requirement, just something to make us happy. Your final work should be fully colored with texture and shading from dark to light. I should not see scribbled color at all, or scribble or quickly shaded work. This needs to be done carefully and slowly. I don't want to see any paper showing through, and your paper should be completely filled. You can use colored pencil or pen, but please do not use marker. Let's take a look at, for your performance task with those 3 surreal elements, here's a couple examples. Got an egg hanging on a wall, or a ladder going to a tunnel, a tree coming from the bed. I love this idea of a pot pouring, I'm going to call it coffee because that would be great to wake up to. A pot pouring coffee all over the floor, or a chalice with a snake intertwined around it. Just some fun ideas to get you thinking. And then sometimes as you are drawing, your vanishing points may go off of the page. Your vanishing point does not have to be in the center of your room design. So here's a couple examples of that final project. Make note of the things that might be surreal and the things that might be functional in this work of art. Very whimsical. This is probably my favorite example here. You can see that value was applied and that shading is beautifully done as it goes from light to dark to show the form of the curve of the curtains or the form of the chess pieces or the chair. And notice how every single line that has been used all goes to the vanishing point. Here's a pen and ink example. And in fact, a little bit more whimsical here. An octopus bursting through the floor. Okay, so you do have opportunities to excel. To excel, I do want to see a different perspective of your room. This could be in the form of a bird's eye view, could be in the form of a section cut view, which is also like a dollhouse. So here's an example of how you could show just a little tidbit of your room in a bird's eye view perspective, while still keeping that surrealist touch. Or you can attempt to do the outside of your room or the outside of your home using 2-point perspective. And if you're really up for a challenge, give 3-point perspective a try. This is a great way that you can make a flat piece of paper look like it goes way far down into space. Okay, so there are your opportunities. There's an overview of your project, the things that we are going to be working through. But to begin, we need to first start with our formative assessment and taking a look at one of the launch tasks available to you. You have 3 options. You only need to complete one in order to start on your formative assessment.